Us for the Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 Winchester Planning Board meeting. We are being recorded both via WinCam as well as by Zoom. If you don't wish to be seen or heard on the recording, please keep your video and your audio off. You can reach us at any time at planningboard@winchester.us, and your email goes to everyone on the board as well as the town planner. So we have with us this evening, I should do a roll call vote first. Why don't I do a roll call vote, which will officially open the meeting? So, Sally Dale.
Present.
Nick Rosettos.
Here.
Eaching Scott.
Present.
And Diab Jarius is I as well. So our colleague Kurt Spring will not be with us this evening. We also have with us Town Planner Brian Zucchelli, Assistant Town Engineer Brian Manter, our recording secretary Nancy Polcari, and let us begin the festivities. So we usually start with updates. Are there any updates for me, Brian?
Yeah, I have a few updates. So biannually with the Department of Housing and Community Development, we have to update our subsidized housing inventory. I met with John Serbier, the chair of the Housing Partnership Board, as well as Marty Jones, the chair of the Winchester Housing Partnership. Sorry, you wanted to get that correctly. And we are going to update the SHI. There's a number of things that are off the SHI at the moment because they were stalled for some time. So we're going to get about things that we didn't, that were never on the SHI that should have been, is about, I believe that end number is about 8 units more than what is counted. And that's, counting River Street and counting Cambridge Street. Those would go back on, those went off. Not that that matters much in the end. We're still right around that 4.8%, even with these 9 or so units. Next, the community transit grant. So Ken Pruitt, the sustainability director, and I met, and we basically had thought that rather than put a grant application together towards a vehicle, that there should be some type of specifically a shuttle demand kind of a planning grant instead of a vehicle grant, in order to figure out, excuse me, in order to figure out exactly what is needed in town. There's a lot of needs when it comes to, busing is very expensive in town for schools, but there's also no after school option either. There's also just one van at the senior, at the Jenks Center. So that's just one vehicle. And we would like to be able to interconnect with other municipalities around our border. We border a number of different towns that do have either some type of shuttle or small transit. So we're going to be looking into that for the grant instead of looking for a vehicle. To super quickly talk about town meeting, ones that for those who didn't tune in, at least the ones where the planning board took a position and others chime in here, Diab in particular. The carriage house failed by a large margin. So the renovation of that has been, is not happening at the moment. The voting for non-citizens, but residents of the town did pass narrowly, just over a simple majority. And the budget approved was nearly as is. Diab, do you want to expand on anything there?
Nope, I think you hit them all.
Okay. Accessory dwelling unit event is happening on May 25th. This is in person at the Jenks. So this is a group that's been meeting over the past several months. 2 members of the planning, two members of the planning board, members of the Housing Partnership Board, and then the Disability Access Commission and the Jenks Center. So this is an event in person again, sorry, May 25th, at the Jenks from 6:30 to 8. And then just to throw another thing at you, the transportation planning listening session, I want to actually get this up. This is on May 19th, and this is a Zoom. So I'm just going to get this up for just a second. Sorry, but this is I wanted so people can do it. They can actually grab this screen if you just hit print screen. I'm going to put up. Oh, that's not working. Sorry, folks. There we go. Okay, so it should be up in a second. So this is a listening session that is, again, by Zoom, coming up on May 19th at 7 p.m. For those of you tuning in now or later, you can grab this. Like I said, you can hit print screen, or you can see the website in order to go to the link for the register to register for the Zoom meeting. But also this survey is really important. It's a web map survey. So you're basically going to be able to put points on a map of saying where there are issues and concerns or improvements that you like. It'll be able to, it's a very free flowing type of survey. So please go to those and I'll stop talking. I feel like I've been talking for a little too long, so I'll turn it back to you, Diab.
Thanks. Thanks for all the updates. The only other thing I wanted to mention quickly was that the town meeting will have there'll be a special town meeting on June 6th, where the town meeting will consider the development of the Waterfield lot, and there will be a new land something agreement, as well as a ground lease presented to town meeting.
Disposition.
Thank you. Disposition presented to town meeting for approval. So.
And with the note that according to something I had in my notes, there's a possibility if it went to a second night, it would go to the the Wednesday that I think we had talked about having a meeting with Foreman Place. So we'd have to be
the 7th. Oh.
Yeah, pay attention to that outcome. That's all I had.
Okay, we are not going to consider an extra evening for town meeting. That just will not happen, Sally. We are going to will that we only have one more night of town meeting. Okay. There is, we do have to wait until 7:15. We have 6 minutes. Let's see.
I'm wondering if Brian could just say a little bit about his meeting with Foreman Place, since we have some extra time, just to see how that went and how that's kind of sets the stage for our upcoming meeting.
Sure. I believe the meeting that I had was before our last meeting, but maybe that was wrong. But what they're trying to focus on, at least for the 17th meeting, is to try and really first listen to what the planning board, in terms of different types of ways that we could, one, interact with the public, but also about what we've heard, what our experience of going up and down the area. So they really want to hear what we think, or I shouldn't say we, it's really not me at all, to be honest. It really is the planning board. On what you think of the area, why you've hired them. I mean, yes, they have a scope, but I think they really want to try to interact with the board to try to find out what are the problems, why are we here, where are we going? Like, it's a real foundational type of conversation.
And I guess, how does that lay the foundation for the zoning changes that we're going to be considering?
I think that's a small piece of it. I think what they're going to find is that the board is just one stakeholder here, and what they're going to do is try to find as many different types of stakeholders in the North Main Street corridor. Businesses, residents, property owners, business owners. These types of things. these types of people who work and live in town, and these are all stakeholders. So what they're trying to do is the board and me specifically also in that particular case, they're going to try to understand what some of the needs or some of the things that are lacking in that area. The most obvious that you can't really avoid is the power lines that are above grade, and that's a large problem. And they hit it very immediately. That we talked about that briefly. And I think the big takeaway from the conversation that I had at Forum in Place was that there's really two different conversations going on here, and they're going to try to figure out which direction. Those two conversations are, yes, zoning can do a lot. We could do some zoning changes, but really there needs to most likely be some type of plan for infrastructure money to make all of that stuff happen. Yes, we can obviously make developers do bits and pieces, or we can make developers contribute to an improvement area. But really, it has to be more than that. It has to be the town having an active plan on trying to get the infrastructure. So, and I basically told them, I was like, well, we'll see what the board says, but so that's going to be one conversation that they definitely wanted some feedback on. And I had said, right now for me, I thought we were this particular exercise, we would be focusing more on things related to changes to zoning and design guidelines, and that the infrastructure is obviously the elephant in the room, but that's not really why we hired them. And that was my take. And there's nothing wrong if the majority of a board feels differently, and they'll obviously take the direction of the board. But yeah, that was one of the points that was important. I think that they.
When you say infrastructure, what do you mean?
Really, what I'm talking about is safe pedestrian infrastructure,
Okay.
Wider sidewalks. Not necessarily. I mean, there might be room for there. I doubt there will be room for protected bike lanes, but really, it comes out to do with. Bump outs and other, I mean, I don't want to say that, the only thing pedestrian infrastructure is bump outs, but basically traffic calming, pedestrian inducing infrastructure. Comfortable sidewalks, outdoor dining, parking at not at a maximum, it's not going to be completely focused on parking. That's always going to be an issue with a lot of the merchants in the corridor. And these are the types of conversation mid and long term that we're going to be talking with these stakeholders about.
Great. I mean, most obviously we'll be working hand in hand with developers, who,
yeah.
But no, that's great. Thank you, Brian.
I think the infrastructure sort of watchword that I have come to is complete streets, which is not a new concept. It's an evolving concept in town planning, but it is looking at the street as a place, the public realm, all aspects of the public share the street with equal importance, pedestrians, bicycles, and cars. And what are the things that you do in the physical infrastructure of a street to make it welcoming and safe for all? I think, Brian, am I right? The title Complete Streets encompasses a lot of the infrastructure improvement ideas that we're going to possibly pursue.
Yes, we have a complete streets policy in town, and the big thing to note about complete streets is that a complete street in one particular area may look different from a complete street in a different place. So it really depends exactly on the needs, but the essence of it is making that all three modes can safely travel. But there are many cases, and in fact most cases, where it's not safe for all three modes to travel just because of the existing conditions and the standard too much. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure for the entirety of the corridor, probably. That's probably what it could be.
Yeah, I think we should return to that topic because we're sort of out of time at this point, but I'd like
We
to have
are
a
indeed.
discussion on the subject. So we should put that down as a item in the parking lot.
Okay, we are now, we have before us 4 ZBA petitions. We have 20 minutes allotted for this, so let us be efficient. Brian,
Sure.
start it off with, please.
Yeah, I'll get a map up in a second. This is petition 3960, 25 Yale Street. They're seeking a special permit to construct an addition that's located closer to the rear property line than permitted as of right. It's located in RDB 10 zoning district and contains just over 12,000, almost 12,500 square feet. The house was built in 2015. It's the addition of an enclosed porch. It's the entirety is a less than a 200 square foot footprint. This is by demolishing a portion of and expanding an existing deck. The deck is in the rear. It faces the property at 12 Foxcroft, and whose the residents have written a letter of support for the petition. These are the direct abutters in the location of the deck that this is going to enclose. Due to the limited size of the location, due to the limited size and the location of the addition, I recommended favorable action with regards to the petition. I'll get a map back up right now, and that's back to you, Dan.
Okay, thank you. So very quickly, are there any comments from the board on this petition? Any concerns?
I have no concerns and no comments. I was
Okay.
in favor of the
Well, let's,
request.
Yeah, looks great. Looks great.
okay. I Ching?
For all those reasons that Brian stated, it's the same setback in the rear, and it has more setback than necessary for the other parts of its side. And because the neighbor wrote a letter, I think that it would be fine.
Okay, my only comment was that I didn't see the before and after. It was very difficult for me to actually understand what was going on because none of the elevations showed the existing conditions, I should say existing conditions. But other than that, I have no concerns. So I would entertain a motion to endorse, to recommend favorable action on petition number 3960, 25 Yale Street.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Sally Dale,
Aye.
Nick Rosettos,
Aye.
I Ching Scott.
Aye.
The Jarius is aye as well. Thank you very much. Record time. Let us move on to ZBA petition number 3961, 142 Sylvester Ave.
Yeah, sorry. 142 Sylvester. So this, again, it's another 355. This is a special permit under section 3.5.5 of the zoning bylaw so as to be permitted to construct an addition that will be located closer to the side property line than permitted as of right. It's located in the RG 6.5, so that's 6,500 square feet zoning district, and it contains just over 7,500 square feet. This is a 1.5 story house. It was built in 1952. It's of a smaller scale to the other buildings in the neighborhood, but with several of the other buildings on the street being larger than the project site. It's the destruction of this existing sun porch, a deck, and a patio area, and replaced with a new vestibule and garage addition, which includes a second floor master suite and office. This property abuts town land. It's the Winchester Water Department to the north and the west, so there are no residents here. Location and materials of the addition seem appropriate. The height of the addition appears slightly awkward, even though it's set back and only 4 feet higher than the main portion of the house. However, I don't think the proposal negatively affects the abutters or the neighborhood in general. I think the addition allows a more modest house to be preserved rather than a demolition, for example. And I recommend favorable action with regards to this petition. Back to you, Deb.
Thank you. Could you put up the
I can get the plans up. Yep.
the assessor's map? Because I want to
This-
comment on that.
The assessor's map. Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Give me a sec.
While you're doing that, any comments from the board?
I do. I have a comment. So I am hesitant about this one because The current side setback is 9 feet and they're proposing 2.1, and for garages, it's 5, right? If I'm corrected. And then for living spaces, it's 15.
I'm sorry, Yi-Ching, what are the
10.
numbers you're citing? I got
I
confused.
am looking at the setbacks, the side setbacks. So the one that they are arguing right now is that they are getting to a 2.1 proposed setback from the side. And I know it's town-owned land, but should it become a subdivision, say? I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't hold to that line of 5 feet. And if you look at the plan there, I understand that, car dimensions have garage dimensions have a certain dimensions that one must have, a 10-foot wide kind of a space. If you could look at the plan here, Brian, but my concern is just that it is at a 2.1 instead of a 5 for the garage, but also the living spaces on top is still at a 2.1, even though it should be at 10 foot setback. So like, even if we okay the garage, the second floor, I feel like at the points that it should have a setback, because it's a living space that can be set back. And I would hold to that line, because even though it is town-owned land, and it doesn't bother an existing neighbor now, if it should get subdivided, I think that, it's part of our zoning. We should have certain setbacks and hold to it.
Totally missed that part.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Sally?
So the comment that I had was that the street-facing window of the upstairs office above the garage just doesn't seem to me to be the right shape. I know that they were trying to echo the shape of the living room window that's to the left of the front door, but the one that they put in for the office upstairs, it's squat and I want to say just inelegant. And this neighborhood the package did come with a historic survey of the development itself, and it talked about the houses on the street, and I'm not sure that this house was built in 52. I thought it was built earlier than that. But
Sally, I think you're mixing this up with the next one. The other one was on Watson.
Oh, Watson, you're right. Okay. Yes, correct. This one, the only comment that I had was that I thought that the window that is of the office, I know you're trying to mimic the window that's in the living room, but it's squatter and it emphasizes its somewhat inelegant form. And I would recommend that you find a window that works more to, Yi-Ching, help me with words here, to grace the facade of the building. Sorry. I just don't like
Sure.
it.
Yeah. Sure. I think you're doing fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, and Yi-Ching, I really appreciate you pointing out the setback in the rear. I actually didn't catch that. But other than that, I don't mind the work they're doing. And again, I appreciate the fact that, like the previous project that we just looked at, they're keeping a modest house. They're making a relatively modest investment to keep a house in town that is not unaffordable to people who want to live here.
Okay, thank you. Nick?
I think I'd echo what Sally said in that regard, that it is refreshing once in a while to see someone keeping a house that is going to stay affordable, at least for the foreseeable future. And they do need the garage. So I guess I would just echo what Sally said.
Okay, thank you. We are 1 minute over our Yi-Ching rule. Brian, could you pop up the assessor's map, please? So I want to preface this with, normally I really don't like side setbacks which are which are not in conformance. I want to put, in this particular case, since I walk through this area quite a bit, I'll note that there is a turnaround there, and that turnaround actually extends to the Tri-Community Bikeway, which goes up to Horn Pond. So I understand your concerns, I Ching, but I don't think this is going to be a site for development because the infrastructure there's no way to put a road in there without taking out the Tri-Community Bikeway.
Mhm.
And because that area is already impacted by that large turnaround, it doesn't strike me as obtrusive in terms of its effect. There are no paths there. There are some really nice snags right across the property line, which I appreciate. But normally, like I said, I would be against a smaller side setback, but in this case, I think I'm okay. So, is there a motion on the floor?
I move that we recommend favorable action on this special permit request. And I would add that the planning board commented on the very small setback on the north side abutting town land, but noted that it is unlikely that that town-owned land would be future subdivided because it's already recreation and conservation space or whatever it's classified as. And also what I said about, I think that it needs a more attractive window treatment in the front so that it just looks like a little bit nicer house than it would otherwise.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, why don't we do a roll call vote? Sally Dale,
Aye.
Nick Rosettos,
Aye.
I Ching Scott. I Ching, you are muted.
Is there a way to say anything beyond nay?
You can abstain. Can you abstain?
Oh, no. I want to say nay, but I mean,
you-
I think that it should just set back on the second floor.
Okay, that's important.
You could
that-
amend the motion to include that rather than saying no to the motion.
So you could make a motion to amend the motion at the moment.
I'm going to make a motion to amend the motion. And my amendment would be to mark it so that the second floor abides by the setback. The first floor can remain.
So that the second floor would step back and.
It would step back, but not fully. It doesn't have to be, because at a certain point, it does become a 10-foot setback to the line.
So I think there is if the 5-foot setback, I believe, is for a detached garage. And so currently this
Right.
garage would not be detached. So your request for a setback would have to be for the entire.
The entire.
structure.
And I think that there's enough in the lot to do that. But, I can withdraw that amendment. I'll just say a nay.
Okay. And I will vote yes on this. So we have a 3-1 and 1 abstention, 1 absent on this one. Thank you very much. We are now going to ZBA petition number 3962.
Yes, 11 Watson Place.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about before. Sorry, Dia.
No problem.
So, excuse me, petitioners are seeking, again, this is another 355, which is a pre-existing non-conforming house that is encroaching on a front setback line. Property is located in the RG, which is 6,500 square feet. It has just under 5,000, so it's non-conforming due to size. House was built in 1915. It is located in the MACRIS, which is the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Inventory System, which is the inventory of cultural resources and historic resources in the Commonwealth. For some reason, the building form is not available. but there is a building form for for this structure. It is also part of the Sheridan subdivision area form, and 11 Watson Place was called out as simply being enlarged by a 1-story 3-bay addition on the left side, lacking exposed rafter ends. 11 Watson has dentils on the dormer to evoke the craftsman style element. So that was all that was mentioned in the area of plan. This is a total addition of 520 square feet of living space to an existing 1,740 square foot house. So Watson Place is kind of this mix of older and newer single and duplex dwellings of varying sizes. The existing footprint will not change as a result of this proposal. The roof lines between the proposed and existing structures are matching. However, the new facade feels a little flat compared to the rest of the house. Overall, I do not see the proposal as a detriment to the neighborhood or the abutters based on the significantly larger houses that are already on the street and the fact that the height nor the footprint is increasing. So therefore, I recommended favorable action with regards to this petition.
Okay. Comments from the board? Anyone would like to begin?
I had a comment that it would be nice to have the exterior architecture be a little bit more articulated. And in particular, it's right across the street from number 14 Watson, which is this house, which is really pretty. And this is an opportunity to sort of borrow from the beauty of that house and incorporate some of that vocabulary into this house in a way that will make the end of the street have its own character. And you made the comment that you thought it was kind of flat. The comment that I had was that when I look at this facade of the building right there, I just feel like the windows, I looked at the floor plan, I see why the windows are arranged the way they are. Okay, this is your upstairs, but this just does not feel attractive to me. This feels like you just threw the windows in because that's where you wanted to look through the hole in a wall, right? Instead of, like, when you look at the house across the street, there's rhythm and form and there's rhythm and form to the window arrangement. And I wanted to see, and I realize it's more of a design review committee comment than a planning board comment, but I think that where this is a inventoried neighborhood, this is an opportunity to do something there for probably the same amount of money that is a little bit more sensitive in terms of the exterior reflection of the neighborhood.
That was
Okay.
well articulated.
Thank you.
Sally.
Who would like to go next?
I agree with Sally about 14 Watson. I would like to see 11 Watson look towards 14 Watson a little bit for some facade articulation, and including, bring the line of the fascia of the first floor around to the facade of the new elevation here, especially where it's visible on the front and the side.
Mhm.
And also with the dentils, I mean, because it's called out and it's not in these drawings right now, but the dentils on the dormers here to be reflected somehow on the second floor roof would be a nice tribute, a nice kind of continuation of a whole building.
Yeah,
So adding the articulation of the, between the first and the second floor, bringing out the line, and then the dentils, even if you could do a dormer instead of a full just flat box, I think that would add a lot to the facade, especially the front facade.
Okay, thank you, I-Ching. Nick?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at a picture of the current configuration. There's a certain symmetry to it that is nice, and the dentils on the upper, because that's a dormer. It would be nice, I mean, to see those kind of carried through And again, I would just echo the comments of the other board members on kind of reflecting the character of the house across the street, and it's an opportunity, I would say, to articulate that into the neighborhood and make it look really nice.
Okay.
But it seems, it seems like a worthy project, and it's maintaining an existing house that is a modest size.
Okie dokie. Brian, could you put up the photographs? So I guess I'm the only person.
I get, sorry, is this okay for them? I'll get the photos in a second, but just give me a second.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So I was looking at, instead of across the street, I was looking down the block at 9 Watson Place, which is essentially what this building was like prior to the addition of the 1-story bump out to the left.
They were like twins.
And so one of the things is that this is an old,
Oh yeah, 9. Yeah.
So the Macros was talking about the craftsman style house, and it seems to me that this is what I would prefer the new design to try to bring out, is more of this form. So Brian, if you could move down to 11 Watson Place. So what I see here is there's an opportunity to, instead of putting up that big solid face to the left, is try to mimic some of the craftsman-like features to the right, so it's more symmetric that way. So it wouldn't be taking from 14 Watson Place across the road, because it's a totally different style, but it would sort of reinforce some of the craftsman-like style. I did have a real concern with, and Brian, if you could go to the elevations. So these are all stylistic comments on my part. I think that the size of the project is quite reasonable. I think this is an excellent thing to do. So if you could pop, yeah. So my concern is that the roof of the addition is really flat.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from the side, it dwarfs the original structure, and I don't think it mimics that as well. So on the front, one of my colleagues mentioned maybe using dormers instead, something so that you don't just see this very thin roof from the front, which is what you see there, but you bring a dormer out, you create some sort of a banding in between floors that mimics the roof coming down on the right, that you try to bring them together as a single design instead of as what looks like 2 very separate things, and you work on making it look more like the original. So those are my concerns from the design standpoint. But other than that, I am in favor of this. So if there is a motion on the floor, I would welcome one.
I'm wondering if I could speak briefly, Mr. Chairman. Larry Murray.
Larry Murray, does the board want to hear from the attorney for the proponents? You can say yes, no, maybe.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
Okay, thank you. And I know you have a long schedule tonight, but first of all, I just want to introduce my clients, Tina Dewan and her husband, Wei Janan. And they're right there in the corner there. And they have 2 little boys, a 1-year-old boy and a 3-year-old boy. And, they were lucky enough to be able to get this house. And of course, it's only 1,740 square feet. And so they are looking to have an affordable house where they can bring their family up. And so they're only adding 520 square feet to the house. And I understand all the design issues. I know all those things are very important, but they did get from all of their neighbors, all the properties, including 14 and the one to their left and the right and the 2 on Glenwood Avenue, all the properties around them, they have signed a petition in favor of this petition for our clients. And I wish that the board could see the way fit to give a favorable approval to this. I know that we're going to be going before the design review board, and they would certainly have some issues about that, I'm sure. The reason why I included all that historical stuff is because the zoning board of appeals put together a new forms, and those forms ask for all of those things. So I dutifully included them all, and I gave you pictures of all the properties around there as well. So again, I would ask the board to look at what the standard is here. The standard really is this change substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity? That's the standard under the bylaw. And I would really wish that you people could vote favorably on this, and maybe talk about design if you want, but at least say that the petition, for this young couple is appropriate under the standard, which essentially is the change substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity? And I think by any reasonable standard, it's not. We're not changing the footprint. We're only adding 520 square feet to the property. It's not really a design issue. And I know that you people are concerned about design, but maybe the design review board, could step in on that issue. I would just ask you to, to favorably recommend based upon the criteria. And I thank you for your time, and I apologize. I know that you people have a long agenda, and I just wanted you to say hello, at least to Tina and Wade. You want to just wave and say hello, Tina and Wade? Yeah, okay.
Hello.
They have two little children that are 1 and 3, and being a father of 5, I just hope that they can be able to use that house effectively.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Murray. I think at this point we are ready for a motion from the board. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll try to make a motion for favorable action on the special permit for 3962, with the note that the planning board had a number of design observations, which I can capture in the letter to the ZBA, and that we look forward to further articulation of design, aesthetic design improvements from the design review committee. But with regards to the special permit itself, we do not see this as a detriment to the neighborhood.
We could just simply say we recommend favorable action, which says the same. That's
Right,
pretty
okay, we
much what
recommend favorable action, but I want to say that we would encourage the applicant to work with the design review committee to bring the design of the addition to a more consonant shape for the house.
That is, I think, very elegantly put.
I hope I can remember that.
Yes, so consonant
Write it
shape.
down.
I'm sure that Nancy will pick up on that.
And there's the good old tape recording.
Yeah, and I believe historical has also not looked at this. Does this go before? No. So I think both design review and historical will have their input as well. So with that, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it, and I wish you both very good luck with your project.
So do I.
Excellent. So let us have a roll call vote. Eaching Scott.
Aye.
Nick Rosettos.
Aye.
Sally Dale.
Aye.
And Diab says aye as well. So excellent. Thanks very much. Good luck.
And thank you very much, Chairman and members of the board, for taking the time to listen to us. And we very much appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. And then we speed on to, and we're only a little bit behind, 3963, which is, what is 3963?
21 Church Street.
So, yep, this is 121 Church Street. So, oh, here,
There he is. Hi, Brandon.
give me just a second here. Get back to the right page. I was about to put up the map, but there are actually really good photos, or there are good photos that are in the actual application.
I thought this was the most useful document right here.
Okay, so here we go. So the petitioners are seeking a special permit under section 5.1.10. This so as to be permitted to have the width of their driveway entrances greater than 10 feet. The property is located in the RDB zoning district and it contains just about 16,000 square feet. This is the first special permit of this kind since the driveway curb cut bylaw was amended several years ago. The planning board, along with the engineering department, felt a special permit process should be allowed in order to deal with requests for widening curb cuts under specific circumstances. One of the examples that we used as potential for a special permit at town meeting was an application that dealt with a somewhat narrow, busy road that prevented a vehicle from making a right into their driveway. This was specifically this exact type of situation was contemplated when we came up with the bylaw for a special permit in terms of why we would give a special permit or not. There's obviously, different ways whether or not it's a reasonable ask. And that's what this question is this a reasonable ask? So driveways that are 10 feet wide along a busy road really preclude the driver from being able to make that right without either hopping the curb or crossing the yellow line. So the proposed widening is in line with the intent of the bylaw and should pose little concern to the abutters of the neighborhood in general. And therefore, I recommended favorable action with regards to this petition. I can get up the site plan in just a second. So we are all looking at the same thing, but back to you, Deanne.
Okay, I just want to mention that we are now 10 minutes past our end time for this part, but we will continue. So are there any concerns? Sally?
So I had no concerns about this. I was concerned about the trees, and I see that the trees are all well accommodated for in the layout. And so I understand exactly what's going on because I live near there and know exactly what goes on in that block. And I think that it's a fine reason to make an exception.
Okay, thank you. Nick?
Yeah, I walk my kids to school by there every day when we don't drive, and the curbs are way too narrow. It seems like a perfectly reasonable request.
Yijing?
I have no concerns with it.
Okay. Brian, if you could put that back up. My only concern is that is 14 feet and 15 feet. Those are rather large. I know they may be commensurate with some of the other driveways, but I would, it does increase the, I hate to say target zone for pedestrians, but that's, I guess, what it is. It's a safety issue for pedestrians. And my only question is, can they be narrowed to something more like 13 feet or 12 feet rather than jumping from 10 feet to 5 feet?
I don't know if engineering wanted or commented on this. Just to be very clear, neither Brian Manter, the assistant engineer, although he's a PE, I'm definitely not even close to that, but neither of us are traffic engineers. So I just want to make that very clear. I think this just has to do with being able, it probably could be more narrow, but really it's a question of being able to not only make a right in here, but making a right out of here so that you're not crossing the line either, so that you can at least swing. So the wider it is, obviously it's a safety in both ways, so that you don't, so it's going in and going out. But I don't know if assistant engineer had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Brian. You're correct. I don't have much traffic engineer design experience. However, I do note that the applicant is proposing to put in radius curbing, which will allow them to make a more efficient turn to the driveway. And I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the applicant can safely enter and exit his driveway. So I think they have an existing curb cut opening total of 20 feet, and they're asking to expand that up to a total of 9 more feet. So I think that seems reasonable.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's my questions. I don't know. I see that Mr. Betancourt, you are with us this evening. I don't know. Hi, I was just wondering, did you, when you came, when you came up with the new widths, was this based on, the architect saying, or whoever you got to do this, this is what you need in order to turn in, or was this sort of just to match the neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of, I mean, the width is matching kind of the width of the driveway where it's meeting. But before we did, we had done work to add that curb cut about 1.5 years ago. And in order to do that, we actually had to close up the original driveway opening to get it to 10 feet. So we actually added curb to close it down 10 feet. And previous to that, it was about maybe 12.5, close to 13 feet. And still with that, making that right turn in to the driveway from Church Street would still basically run over the curb, although at the time the curb sweep wasn't there. So you're kind of running over the crumbling, like the rounded off old cobble.
Mhm.
But even then, we would still sort of hit it and would still have to essentially do a wide-ish turn, not as wide as now, but you still couldn't kind of pull to the right. And the challenge of that part of the street is, we're right around the beginning where the lane starts widening, where it becomes 2 lanes. Whether it, officially is 2 lanes there or not, people get prepared. And so if you go to the left, and this actually happened about last week, a couple times, but last week specifically, where you go to the left and you signal right, but even though you're signaling right, they just see you going left and they assume you're moving up to Church Street to take a left onto Cambridge Street and try to pass you on the right. And so you kind of want to go wide left, but if you go too far wide left, you leave room for someone to try and sneak in, and you're basically turning into them, and it creates this kind of confusing, dangerous situation. Whereas, there's on the survey, there's a telephone pole on the East Drive, kind of our primary driveway that meets with the main driveway, which is the one we turn into more often. And that telephone pole is kind of, somewhat dead space. So I thought it would make more sense just to pull the curb more that way. That's the one that's moving about 3 feet, so that you just don't have that issue, that you could hopefully, somewhat hug the right, or at least stay in the middle and not have to move so far to the left and still be able to make your turn in without overrunning the curb.
Okay, so I guess from my point of view, from my perspective, the key point is you have had a wider curb cut than you do now, and you are still seeing problems, so that this is actually would be an improvement over that.
I believe
Okay.
so. And very quickly, the part about the target zone, I know that we're technically adding kind of more driveway space or like a larger curb opening. But, for anyone who's sort of backed up into Church Street or any other, Bacon Street, any of the busy streets, I think having it be a little bit wider allows you to focus more on all the different things, like people passing versus trying not to run over the curb, trying not to get hit by the 2 lanes of traffic going one way and the opposing lane. I think adding this U-turn adds a lot of safety because, even though we have 2 openings now and the combined width we're proposing is, 29 feet, most of our times exiting the driveway now, we're facing forward because we're able to essentially turn around, which is, much more visibility to any kind of oncoming pedestrians, bikers, et cetera, versus when you're backing out and potentially someone's in your blind spot. So, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is there a motion on the floor? Someone propose a motion.
I make a motion to recommend favorable action. Or I lost the number for petition 3963.
Yep. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Nick Rosettos. No, you just muted yourself.
Oh, aye.
Sally.
Aye.
Yi-Ching Scott.
Aye.
And Dave Jerry says aye as well. Thank you very much. And good luck with your curb cut.
Good luck, Brennan.
Okay.
We've reached the inevitable of we're probably going to have to take one item out of the agenda.
Yes.
I'll get the agenda back up, but we just we did actually go relatively quickly through all those. We just happened to have 4, and that was a lot. So
I opened up my mouth at the end on that one. So let us jump right into the Washington Swan RFP. So for those out in TV land, so Washington Swanton is a parcel that's a corner of Washington Swanton. It was known for many years as the mega CVS site because that was what the original proposal was to develop there. That did not make it through land court. The town took it by eminent domain, I think, was it a year ago? Some time ago, I've forgotten already. And the town was given the authority from town meeting to take it to put in affordable housing. Town meeting put a restriction in that 100% of the units have to be eligible for the subsidized housing inventory. And we had a discussion, I think last time around, about the difficulty of achieving that. The select board has decided to go forward with an RFP under those conditions and not bring it back to town meeting to try to amend them. And what we have before us is the draft, which I think is going before the select board very soon for their final approval and then submission.
So at the moment, so this is the draft that is, exactly. That's going to go before the select board that incorporated those votes that you just spoke about, Deanne. And the only thing that could probably change are minor things that are in the evaluation criteria that deal with well, I guess I shouldn't say minor, but they deal with the evaluation criteria, which is matrix, which potentially, but there's, and that's really where we should be focusing the conversation in terms of any comments that we should be giving to them. We could talk about this entire RFP for, a while.
Yeah. So the board has, I think, gone over, and I'm sorry, Nick, that you weren't around when we did this, but the board went over essentially the first part of it, section 1. And the only comment that I would like to make on section 1 is I do believe that on the 4th paragraph, they don't have the right language when it comes to the number of units that are supposed to be on the subsidized housing inventory. So that's just a note in passing. Page 3. For some reason it says. So
what do they have and what are the correct?
They say at least 25% of the housing units should be eligible for inclusion in the state's subsidized housing inventory. And that's just in the 4th line in the 4th paragraph.
And that doesn't match the criteria schedule.
Well, it should be 100%. Have to be.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Yeah, so that
I think that has already been changed.
Okay, good. So
that was a mistake. That was But anyway, this was it's May 10th. This was the May 3rd draft that was distributed.
Okay,
that mistake was caught.
Okay, that's my only comment on the first part. Any other quick comments on the first on that?
I have a comment on page 4, or is that first part?
Okay.
Just in that Winchester blue area where it says the rail station is just a 15-minute walk from the property. It's just a small minor note, but it's a fair housing issue where, talking about walking is an assumption on ability. And I think, there are several ways to talk about that without talking about a bodily thing. So I would just say, watch out for that language.
So we shouldn't say the word walk because it is not inclusive.
Should
Yes.
be proximate.
Or 15. You can say like approximately. It's like one mile from town center.
Or
right?
you could say it's convenient to town center. Something.
Yes, or a short distance.
Short distance. Yeah.
I think using the actual distance is very smart, I Ching.
Yeah.
It's objective and inclusive.
Okay, so let's see. So we'll make a note of that. Good catch.
So
Anything
on
else?
page 5, I had a comment.
Okay.
When we get to the 3rd paragraph under design considerations, and especially when we get to this is where they introduce the concept that there are design standards and design guidelines for this development. And those standards and guidelines had very little to do with what was finally approved for 10 Converse Place. And I would like to have language here that somehow makes it more required that they pay attention to the standards and the elements of form and the guidelines.
So that, just so, Sally, that is, the crux of that is in the evaluation criteria.
Yeah, I noticed that it's a very low score. So we'll get to that when we get to that.
It's not, it's the third one.
What I was going to say is in the second paragraph, the third line, there's a sentence that starts, it will be in addition, and then it reads, it will be important to ensure, this is the second point on this page. It will be important to ensure that the site provides some amenities for neighborhood residents. Again, I realize that they address it as excellent, fair, or fails in the criteria rating. But instead of important to assure, I would have said must
Right. So
or shall.
I think that from the select board's point of view, they want to provide flexibility.
Okay. It's
So
their project.
yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem. It's their
The
project.
other thing I wanted to say was that the design review committee is in the selection process. And I want to make sure that they're given a chance to review the RFP before the select board finalizes it, because they are part of the review process.
I guess I'd like to add that I think that people that are knowledgeable in design can really make a difference to the final outcome. And we should really try to make this a real nice project, a building that we're proud of, that people are going to look at and say, the government did a great job on this, and that it is beautiful to look at. It blends and it enhances the neighborhood. So I don't know how that is translated into actual language, but I think that everyone in town would like to see something that we're proud of, and I think we should really try to do the best job we can on it, and really push for the design
Right.
people to be involved and to have a back and forth on it, to the extent that we're able. That's my comment.
Okay.
I had just,
Shall we move on? Okay.
yeah, continuing, I like the next time reading through the whole thing that I had comments was on page 10, where it talks about the development concept narrative.
Mhm.
It says under A, the details of the proposed units, affordability and accessibility. And it says that the proposal has to include a detailed description of the proposed distribution of, the type of housing to be provided, proportion of rental and condominium, if any. So I'm mindful of the town meeting vote that said that they wanted 100% of the units to count towards subsidized housing inventory. But this development, this concept narrative is inviting the possible proposal of, I'm just going to make up numbers, that there's 40, I don't know, I can't even make up, there's 25 rental units and 25 condos or whatever. And when you start to do that, it erodes the intent of town meeting that this would be all affordable housing.
I just want to make one quick point. It's a minimum threshold criteria that all of the units have to count. So
If they're rental,
No,
if they're condos, they don't count.
no, but
Just a
Of
point of
course, I'm just-
clarification.
excuse me, sorry. It is a minimum threshold criteria, meaning that all of the units have to count based upon the town meeting vote. There's no eroding of that. All of the units have to count. So if
They
there are,
can't be, then they can't be condos, is that right?
if there are any condos, those would also have to count on the SHI. It's
I see.
unlikely, it is unlikely. However, it is, like I said, minimum threshold means if they don't all count, we throw the proposal away.
I understand now.
I just had a question for Brian, or just a point of, when we were discussing that initial mistake where it was 100 versus 25. Was that the percentage of units that were supposed to, that are supposed to count?
Exactly. So,
But not necessarily all of those units are going to be affordable, but 100% have to count. Is that right?
that is exactly right. So 100% of the units have to count. And the way that that can happen is in two different ways for a rental project, a rental development. That can happen if either 25% of the units are restricted at 80% of AMI and below, or 20% of the units are restricted at 50% of AMI and below.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that also may have been a holdover from a much earlier version of this, which did not have the 100% requirement. So this RFP has been through a number of
And Brian, you mentioned that there's a May 10th edition of this that corrects that out of date.
No, I'm saying that, yeah, it's not, the new version is not today's version. I was just saying that today is May 10th. This was from May 3rd. There's a review that's being done by legal right now before it gets to the select board. So that's yeah, I believe they're taking that up on.
And is the select board open to comments from other entities? Is that in the mix?
we can certainly provide comments. They
We,
don't have to listen.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
I think that there are certain parts of this that I think will not be greatly changed. I think the evaluation criteria are really the ones which,
Right.
I think we should,
Right there.
yeah,
Okay.
I think we should focus there.
yeah,
Let's go.
so, I mean,
Okay.
And I did see the Housing Partnership Board chair here as well. I would
Okay.
imagine they would,
Hi, John.
they might have yeah, well, he can raise his hand. I guess I'll stop talking.
And on page 12, it does update the developer selection criteria, minimum threshold criteria, item 3B.
Yeah.
Oh,
so those both get us to 100% SHI.
either 3A or 3B on page
Yep,
12.
either of those gets us to 100% SHI.
Okay.
So those are the minimal criteria. So,
Turning to page 13.
yep. Let's go to 13.
Well, actually, let me find one place in the document where they talk about evaluation criteria number 1. There was.
So let me, while you're looking at that, let me just explain to those in the audience and perhaps members of the board who haven't seen this before. So each criteria has a weighting, which is the number with X, which is preceded after with like importance 6x for the first one. So they have a weighting, and then each criteria also can be judged as to whether it is highly advantageous, or not advantageous. And depending upon that judgment, you get a point value, and you take the point value, you multiply it by the importance, and that gives you the final weight for the final score for that element. You then add up all of the scores for each of the elements, and you use that in a hopefully objective way to evaluate the different proposals that come forward.
So for instance, if you were highly advantageous on the first one, you would get 12 points. On the second one, you would get 10. On the third, you would get 6. On the fourth, you would get 6. And on the last 2, you would get 2. And if you add those up, that's 38 points is the highest score you can get.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the select board, these are not in stone, and there's period, meaning that this is where it currently is, and I believe the select board is going to make these types of decisions at their next meeting, which I believe is the 16th. I believe that's what this is. I believe that's coming up on Monday.
So the philosophical point here is that in the actually, I just had it in my hand. There's a statement that says it is expected that, the town will receive payment for at least, if not more, than they paid for the land.
So here, are you guys seeing the evaluation criteria?
Yes, we're
Okay.
seeing that on your screen.
Okay, so let's go over them. So the purchase price, this you get the most amount of points for getting more than the 527. So again, I would look at this grid. This grid is probably the best comments that you could potentially give, because this is actually where the rubber meets the road for when a proposal gets evaluated.
Right, so what I was gonna say was that to give more points to the town getting its money back than to the town meeting affordable housing goals, you would get 12 points instead of 10 points. Or you would get 12 for one and 10 for the other out of 38, is to say that we're willing to, we place more money on return than on affordable housing. And that's been at the crux of the debate about all of our projects in town.
That was based upon the town meeting vote. So the town meeting vote was not only do all rental units have to count, but that purchase price be I'll be honest, I don't remember the exact wording. It was something like a defining,
It would have to be one of the evaluation criteria.
but it was more than just be an evaluation criteria. I don't remember the exact wording, but so that's what it was trying to reflect basically. So, but this is exactly what you should be commenting on. So,
Right.
do you think that should be the same? That would be something that we could note, that the purchase price and the development meets the town's affordable housing goals, whatever those X's are, should be the same. Is that something you want to? I think that's a good discussion point.
Yeah. So I think it's the practicalities of this is that no one will be able to get highly advantageous on both 1 and 2 and actually make this project work.
That is correct.
Because of the feasibility.
Just the feasibility.
You can't offer the highest affordability and the deepest affordability and also have, a money tree.
You can if you go to number 3 and you say that I know you have design standards, but in order to make this feasible, we're going to make it taller.
But if you make it taller, then you will get not advantageous on design, and you will lose a possible 6 points.
You'll lose 6 points, but you will have gained 12 and 10 up above. And
well, so that's the question is, what is the balance?
That is the question. I see, Dia, that John Sabir has a hand raised. But I didn't know if you want. We might have some time issues. Maybe if we have some questions for him. But
I would. John, if you could hold off just a bit while we wander through this. So I think that the board. The most important. I think that the wording of the criteria. I think that the wording of number 2 is very confusing, because it really needs to. It doesn't. It looks like you can get out of the minimum criteria of 100% SHI, but that's not possible. But apart from the wording, I think that we have to look at whether we think that number 1 should be 6 times, maybe it should be 4 times. Number 2, leave it at 5. Number 3, one of the reasons that they bumped up number 1 was there was the concern that if you did well enough on the other categories, you wouldn't be returning the maximum amount of money back to the town. And that would go against what was the perceived request from town meeting, and also what came out of Waterfield was that you weren't getting a good financial reward. So by bumping up number 1, you could make up for the fact that you might have another proposal which did really well on 3, 4, 5, and 6, but didn't return as much money back to the town.
Dia, super quick, just to
Yep.
expand a little bit on what this highly advantageous with evaluation criteria number 2 is. So what this is trying to say is that, so not just the, the minimum required is 25%. If you don't have it, again, you're thrown out. The difference between highly advantageous and advantageous is that you're not just giving the absolute minimum, which is you're giving more than 25% of the units are deed restricted affordable at 80, but you also have some that are actually at 60% of AMI and below.
Right.
So that's the difference. And that's if you're doing the 25% of the units at 80, or if you're doing 20 of them at 50, it's basically just think of deeper affordability. So
Right.
highly advantageous is more than 25% with deeper affordability. Advantageous is you're doing essentially the bare minimum required, really the minimum required, and there is no zero, because if you don't meet the minimum, you are not eligible.
You're not eligible, right? 'Cause
So
it's-
I
I
think,
would just like to see the first two things weighted the same, I think is my feeling.
so
because they
that's a
parallel.
yeah, I think that's certainly, and we haven't even gotten through the rest of these. So
I
maybe,
just add that I'd like to see number 3 consistent with what I've said in the past, that I think we really owe it to ourselves to build a nice building. And I think that number 3 should be up there with the first 2.
okay, that might be worthy of a vote then. It seems like
I would
yeah.
say, given what happened with 10 Commerce, a lot of us thought it was a really good design, and some of us thought it wasn't. And so I think that idea versus the hard concrete numbers, the price, as well as the number of affordability would be in a section different from design. And I totally agree, design is very important. But
I'm sorry,
I
Isheen, I
think
didn't quite get
would
what you
us
were
in trouble.
just saying. Can you just say that again?
I just think that the design part is less measurable than number 1 and 2.
It's more
And
subjective. I see.
because we are really trying hard to get our SHI up and, getting our money's worth or whatever, then those 2 things make sense to be apart from the design. And no doubt, we should absolutely do a beautiful building. But
My feeling though is it's going to fall by the wayside.
I don't think it will. I think they will always be part of the
I
discussion.
mean, because we've had some buildings. I mean, every building is an opportunity. I mean, if you look at, of course, 666 Main Street is maybe it's an older example, but every building is an opportunity to do something great. And I think we need to support that.
I wouldn't want that discussion to then waylay our point of making some affordable housing in this town.
We're going to get 100%.
Right, but so first off, I want to point out that when we did the Waterfield RFP, I don't believe design was as high as affordability. I can't remember, it was so long ago, but we certainly ended up with several really dynamite designs. So I think there's I'm not as concerned with the design, if only because they will have to, they know what they have to do in order to win. And they're going to be competing against firms which can design and bring in decent housing. So
Also, if no one, we don't have to pick anything. Just so we're clear that the town does not have to pick something if it feels it doesn't meet the standards.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there were certainly, again, the Civico project, the Waterfield project had 5 contenders, and at least 4 of them were really top-notch designs. So I think we're good on that personally.
I would like to see that numbers 1 and 2 were equal, either at 5 or at 6, and that number 3 would be a 4. Okay. It sounded like the number 4 item, which incorporated retail, communal, or public amenities as at number 3. They say right in the narrative, but if you can't do it, let us know. Like they sort of belied giving it a 3x value in the narrative. So I question that. And then as far as bicycle, pedestrian, and traffic, I would not consider that just a single point, or under the 2, you would get 2 points. Because those are the things we're really struggling with in this town as we build additional housing. And I think it needs to be done with those in a much higher consciousness.
So I just want to point out that mathematically, if we start increasing all of the multipliers,
Right, that's what I was wondering about exactly.
we essentially make so we're decreasing the dynamic range between them. And so essentially we may as well give them ones. So the question is, how do you want to differentiate which one really goes at the bottom? So for instance, I might claim that the climate change sustainability one should be more than a 1. If we
I
bump
think
that,
so too.
but then everything else gets, we've now made everything else, everything to have the same.
So it's great. It's like great inflation, or it's just you make everything equal.
It allows some separation, and it allows, when at the end of the day, it's still not just numbers. You're still looking at an actual site plan. You're looking at something. So it's not, this is not the evaluation criteria are still not the only things that you're really looking at. What you're trying to do is, I think the board's almost there, is that trying to figure out, really, are there, it's really, I think it is very clear, basically from not just this conversation, but other conversations that I have had through several information sessions that we've had for this. So hearing from neighbors are clearly very, very interested in 3. And to be honest, the town as a whole are really, really interested in 1 and 2. And that's just how it shook out in terms of the public meeting, the several, as well as the select board. So, if these are the same, these are clearly showing, numbers 3 and 4 are clearly showing this middle class of, not that it's not important. And I think I want to make that's what I want to make clear, is that it's not, obviously everyone thinks that all of these things are important. Is there anything that's head and shoulders above, which I think we figured out? It is one, it's some, I would imagine, and please speak up now, I guess, if that, but I think
affordability
is that 1 and 2, 1 and 2, whatever it is, should be the same. The idea of, and it's the idea what to do with number 3 in terms of making relation. So yeah,
I would raise the points on number 3 to a 4, okay, and I would put the development at the affordable mix at a 6, so that it's equally important as getting the
Or
purchase.
what about 5 and 5? And then you preserve the total number.
And I defer to somebody who's intuitively a mathematician. If you did 5, 5, and 4, going for 1, 2, and 3, and then the retail and communal, given that the language says, well, if you can't do it, don't do it.
But
it's really, if you can provide more housing that maybe we need, it's a question, because now it's a little bit more mixed. Even though a majority of the people would like commercial, there is still a minority of people that do not want any commercial whatsoever, even if it's
You're talking about the neighborhood.
Yes, I'm talking about within the neighborhood. Yes.
Yes.
So I think that we're going to have to, I don't know how we do this, to be honest, because if we go through and start bumping either of these up individually, I don't know what we end up with.
Then we can come up with a philosophical statement.
Right. So I think that, we're going to agree on some and disagree on others. And I don't know how to approach moving these points around.
Well, I don't either. I think that what they're doing is they're saying for the person or the group that drafted these things, 6, 5, 3, 3, 1, 1, they were saying this is how we see these things is relatively important.
No, not at all. Just I want to make that very clear. How this, and I was obviously a part of this group, how this was developed was simply based upon the town meeting vote and the select board.
Right. And so the town meeting vote
But
put 1 and
meaning
2
that-
right at the top.
Right. So not that it was the group. I just want to make it was not what the group felt was important as part of the RFP. It was simply based upon the, trying to reflect the vote in the RFP.
Right.
So I don't know how that helps us move forward though, because we have to make up our own decision here.
Well, so Dee, I
So,
made
hold on a second. Can we, is the number 1 and 2, those are the 2 things that we really should talk about, right? Like, should we place them on equal grounds? Or is purchase price more important or has greater multiplier than the affordability?
So let's do a straw poll. Who believes that they should be on equal footing? Okay. So 4.
I guess so. I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I miscounted. So we have, so our first vote is that 1 and 2 should be equal. Okay, now let us go down to what Brian sort of called the middle group, which are 3 and 4. Do we believe that 3 and 4 should be on equal footing?
I don't believe that 4 should be on equal up there in the middle. I don't.
So you think,
especially since the neighbors aren't prioritizing that.
I think we should include a qualitative statement on 4, because I mean, one of the amenities of living in a communal space is that you can go downstairs and get a fresh baked croissant in the morning. And I
Which
think
you can
that
down at Mamadou's. You just walk down to Mamadou's.
well,
That's right,
What
Mama
I'm saying is that's neither here nor there. I mean,
but it is right.
I think we
across
need
the
to
street.
encourage living arrangements that promote walking, and I think that a qualitative statement that you're not going to put, a shoe store in there or a CVS. I mean,
No, I
would
think they
go
even-
further than saying, that
I would love to have a shoe store there.
a shoe
Just saying.
store,
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say a shoe store, but a
a
shoe
sneaker.
repair.
I guess I meant a sneaker store, but
But the point, here's the flip side, is that the more commercial space you put in, the less financially viable this project becomes.
oh, it does. Why? How?
Because you need to pack in all of those residential units in order to make your money back.
You
Wait,
make
wait.
a lot. You just make a lot less money renting out the space. It's just a real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, it just
Oh, I see. Okay.
commercial does not make as much money as residential. Period. In Winchester. Period.
Brian, clarifying
Okay.
question. You mentioned that there is some data about the neighborhood preferences, and you said that the majority of the neighborhood wants there to be like a convenience store.
So like basically for 10 years and I've only been here for 8, but for about 10 years it was we want to see something like a bakery or a corner store or but also something obviously that looked nice, that was in the same scale or whatever be allowed by zoning, which was 45 feet and 3 stories. So that's where that kind of scale came from. This is a GBD1. So then the neighborhood was essentially for a while was like, okay, 45 feet, 3 stories. We'll have 2 stories of residential and something on the first floor that we can walk to and spend the morning or an afternoon.
Right, coffee.
So that was
eggs,
for
whatever.
like 10 years. For like 10 years, that's what was essentially heard. Now, several of those residents have moved away. New residents have moved in, and now some residents. I mean, a small amount. It's a small amount. I'm going to say out of the, do not quote me. Let's say 15, 20% of the residents. This is just totally based upon what I've heard, are
Yeah.
like, well, I don't really know if this is really the best. Like maybe just residential, maybe no commercial at all. So that's like a new thing that's happened like around COVID time, within the past 2 years or a year before that.
Well, so what is the sort of town planning wisdom about these small distributed retail hubs distributed across the town?
I mean, it's always the quality of the business. Meaning that if you have a quality business, people are going to want to go there. I don't really, in terms of town planning, the idea is that just by throwing commercial in there, no, it doesn't create a space and create movement and create a place that you want to live. It
But
has
if
to
it
be
was
the
like
right.
a Formaggio cheese store, the neighbors would think it was great.
Okay, but the
Yeah.
whole point of this site is that it's very close to town center, and there's already some retail, some restaurants on Cross Street, or I mean Swatton Street.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
I
you know,
just-
and my little understanding of development is that, you know, a 1+4, 1+5 is the most money-making situation that one could have in a multi-use sort of a building, right?
What's
Like
a
a one,
1-4-5?
the first story is like the steel, the big span, the retail, and then the 4-5 is all residential. So
Okay.
that is like the moneymaker.
Right.
But so a 1+2 is not going to be like a big deal. It's not going to make your money.
I'm expecting this to come in with at least 3 floors of housing above street level.
So I
Okay.
want to, yeah, so I think we're going.
Right. So I wasn't aware that there was an income difference between commercial and residential, which is leading me, but still, we probably should put in one coffee shop just for the sake of.
We can't
Of-
determine what goes in there, to be honest.
Right.
And to
It's
be honest,
all in the ratings.
yeah, and I note that everything that you're talking about are things that are available downtown or nearby. But the one thing I missed on that block was the laundromat. And
Yeah, there was a laundromat, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we circle back, because we are running out of time, is when we look at 3 and 4, it sounds like we don't want them to be at the same level. And that at least I Ching has said she thinks that 4 is of lesser importance than 3. Did I get that right, I Ching? You're muted. You're still muted, I Ching.
Sorry. I think that 4 is less important than 5 or 6, possibly.
Okay, so I agree.
I could agree with I Ching about that.
I would, and personally, I would swap 4 and 6
Hmm.
because I don't know
I agree.
that, I don't
I
know
agree
that
with that.
the developer, I mean, they're on the corner of 2 major streets. They're going to have to deal with traffic one way or the other. I don't know that this is going to put any special. I don't think that number 5 actually, I think it's right at 1.
Number 5 should be right at 1.
I think so. And I think number 6 should be at 3 and number 4
Well,
should
so
be at 1.
Here's what I'm thinking, that I don't know how to tell what the population of the building will be, but let's just say that it's 100 people move in there and there's 60 cars. I just made that up, okay? That's a lot of bodies and bicycles and pedestrians and automobiles that need to be very carefully planned for. It's a major cross street in town. Everyone knows that. It's not far from Morocco, and there's a lot of pedestrian traffic in that area. Everybody knows that. I don't think that we should put it down at the bottom and say, oh, and by the way, don't forget, we don't want to run over the kids.
So
yeah, so what this is saying is that the developers identified some anticipated traffic mitigation. This is very preliminary. So everything, it still has to go through, this is still this would eventually be a 40B. Would still have to go through the zoning board. There would definitely be a traffic mitigation study. They would definitely have to do traffic mitigating measures, period. This is just saying, as part of the RFP, that they've gone out of their way in the next 2 months, or however long that's going to be up for. Most likely it'll be 2 months. Did they also look at that? So it's not like, are they going to not then therefore, do traffic mitigation? So I just want to make that distinction.
Okay.
So it's almost binary. If you just even
Yeah,
say
if
you're gonna pay
they
attention
have,
to it.
yeah, if they've identified
I
some,
understand.
yeah.
And
One thing to bump up, if we bumped up 6 about sustainability objectives, I would want to revisit page 5 on the list of sustainability and mitigation. And it does seem like the list there, the punch list of tree shrubs, roof garden, on-site composting, feel a little bit like a product and like some kind of like virtue signaling to me, and doesn't feel like very robust in understanding sustainability and mitigation. Like the creation of the building, the care of it, the maintenance of it, the life cycle of it should be fully, thought of in the creation of this building. So like, if we do bump up 6, as I'm saying, let's visit, or just say, please revisit the page 5 and the sustainability mitigation and make it more robust, because to me, These
Yeah.
things just seems too kishy to me.
I don't think the
agree.
sustainability director, I think those were in the design standards from the architect, and that the sustainability director has not.
Well,
I don't think that, yeah, I don't think.
I'd really like him to weigh in strongly and
No,
add
that
significant
it's-
value.
Yeah.
It's
so-
definitely, he's definitely going to weigh in.
So
I just
one
don't
of-
know when.
Yeah, so one of our comments will be that the sustainability section on page 5 is not robust.
And we are looking forward to hearing robust recommendations from Ken.
Or whoever, but yeah. So if we bump up so I think in order of, so what I'm hearing is that we've kind of settled on moving 6 up underneath 3, dropping 4 below 5. No.
Sorry, Dia, hold on. We're
I
gonna hear,
missed- I
yeah,
missed
hold on.
that.
I think I have an idea. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. So wait, I think just going down this, we're just saying what these numbers are. So I think what I'm hearing is that 1 and 2, these are both 5x. So
Okay.
purchase price is 5x.
Yep.
Number 2, development meets the town's affordable, 5x. Development concept narrative and drawings with the site consideration, 4x.
Yes,
Okay.
Development project incorporated communal space, 1x.
1x.
5, developer identifies and say traffic. I don't know where that is. I think that's a 1, but I don't know if
I hear what you're saying, Brian,
Yeah.
that this is a
It's
very
a bu-
binary
it's- yeah,
question, as long as
yeah.
they acknowledge it.
I think it's a
exactly.
1.
That's a 1, and then the climate then should be somewhere in the 2 to 3 range.
I think it should be 3.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Each
I mean-
does 3 do it?
Yes, so design was 4, climate 3. 2 was
5.
traffic. Okay,
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Traffic
Yeah.
is a 1.
Traffic
And-
is a traffic is a
I like
traffic
it.
is a 1. Well,
So
yeah,
traffic's
5
a
is
1.
5 is, yeah.
And
Okay.
then the retail is also a 1.
Right.
Yeah. So going down, we now have 5, 5, 4, 1, 1, 3.
That's what I got. Yeah.
Okay. And I think we put John to sleep.
Oh, John,
You still there? Okay. So we are now way beyond our bedtime. Sorry. No, we are. Where's my
but
agenda?
I want to hear what John has to say.
Well, let's look at our schedule first, because I have lost my agenda. How did I manage
It's
to
we
do
have
right
that?
one more hour.
We have one more hour, and we still haven't talked about MPIC, town planner position, town meeting warrant article, education outreach, and our executive session.
Well,
So,
let's see what
by
we
the
can get
by the
done.
way, just so we're clear, we don't have to do executive session. That was a mistake. Those minutes were already approved. So sorry about
Oh.
that.
So
Okay.
we just gained 20 minutes.
Yes. but
Wait,
we-
just wait. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Nancy, is that correct? Right, that entire.
That is correct.
Okay, so that entire thing is not necessary. So
Yeah.
that is,
Okay. So
okay.
we are
Thank you.
currently half an hour behind.
yes. And sorry, but I need a minute. I'm going to get a glass of water.
Okay. So are there any other comments we want? So far, what I've got on the RFP is that we have a general comment that we want the sustainability and mitigation section on page 5 to be made more robust in terms of actual remediation of the physical plant rather than just the amenities. And that we are reordering the evaluation criteria on page 13. I think those were the 2 things I got out of this.
Right.
Um,
I had substantive edits on page 18, Diab.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that I caught up with what we've got so far. So let us, so if we're done with the evaluation criteria, why don't we set a time limit for when we want to be done with this? So it is it's 8:40 right now. So you think we can get this done in another 10 minutes or another 5 minutes? John has got his hand up. John, you want to say something really quick?
Yeah, I just have 2 very quick points. My first one is a question to Brian the 5.27 million price is based on highest and best use of the land. There was a second appraisal done that assumed that the affordable housing would be developed on this site. Brian, do you know the results of the second appraisal?
Brian is not with us at the moment.
Okay. So that was
Was
my
it
first
higher
question.
or lower, John?
What?
Was the second appraisal higher or lower?
Oh, it has to be lower.
Because it was based on affordable.
Yeah.
Right.
And so my suggestion would be that the price criteria reflect somehow that second appraisal. And then my second point was just a comment that I agree with Diab that the number 2, the affordable housing, is, I find, totally confusing. And it's not clear, it's not simple. And the only way that the only way you can achieve 100% SHI with condominiums is if all the condominiums are affordable.
Right. At
That's-
80 or at 50,
Yeah.
Right, so it's unlikely they're going to do that.
It's
because-
impossible.
unless they make a very tall building.
So,
Yeah, that would violate the design considerations.
so I think the
Brian,
Housing Partnership Board will discuss this tomorrow night, but I just find, I mean, I agree with Diab, number 2 is very confusing.
so
The
Brian,
language in the box.
yeah, the language in the box. Brian, John had a question as, do you know what the new price is for when they reappraise the lot for affordable housing?
Valuation.
The evaluation?
No, but I believe it, no, but I believe it has to be incorporated into the RFP.
So is the 5.27 million, you think it'll change to reflect that number?
No.
I understood that the whole point of the town meeting vote was that we had to make it 100% counting towards SHI, and that we had to get back all the town's money.
No,
No.
it was not that we had to get back all the money. It was not that specifically. It was talked about that was what many people came up at town meeting and said, we really need to do this. But the actual vote was that it be, I don't want to say high in the evaluation criteria, but that it would at least be, it be into the matrix of the evaluation criteria.
It'd
But
be
it
a
did-
consideration.
But it was
Yeah.
more, it was like stressed. It wasn't just throw it in there. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact, but it did not have to say recover it didn't say recover.
Right.
This is what
But
this is what we thought most
Because
of
the
town meeting was
language says
interested
it
in.
is expected that
No, well, it's
the town expects to recover the full amount of its purchase price for the property through the sale of the land to the developer. Page 3, third paragraph.
but you could
That is the
just-
goal.
That is, and that's why when you look at the evaluation criteria, you see that if you don't do that, you get a 0. So the question that John put, and I don't know, I think that if the 5.27 million were lowered to whatever the appraisal was for affordable housing use, then I think that would really upset a lot of people. So I don't know that that's going to change.
I don't think it would. The whole point was to recover. We paid 5.27 million,
5.27
and then we
million,
want to recover the
Right.
5.27.
And in the process of recovering it, we want to make a significant dent in our shortfall of affordable
Yeah.
housing.
So
Yeah, I mean, my point, that the problem with the first RFP was that you could achieve evaluation criteria. You can be highly advantageous on evaluation criteria number 1, but then not on highly advantageous on evaluation criteria number 2. It seems to me that same problem still exists with this matrix.
Yeah, that there's a kind of a complex scenario exercise that you have to do, John, right? When you try
Well,
to
if
figure
you-
these things out.
well, you have to at least meet the minimum. So I just want to point out that we are now past the possible 5-minute mark in the remainder of our conversation, and we have 5 minutes left if we want to get done by.
Is there anything else that we have to do on this? I mean,
Sally raised, she has a concern about something on page 18.
Yes, on page 18, they're minor but substantive edits that I made a
Oh,
note of.
yeah.
They're not
On
minor if they're
page-
substantive.
Well, in other words, it's just 2 words or whatever. Page 18, elements of form, second to last line, achieve the overall architectural and town design goals as determined by the planning board, the design review committee,
Okay, I'm on page 18. I don't know where you're.
elements of form,
Okay.
introduction.
Oh, you
third
want to
line
add
down.
design review committee?
Yes, after the word planning board, insert design review committee.
Okay. so
And then
page-
on the paragraphs 2 under A, height. Third from the bottom, it says, however, if those features are designed in a coordinated, distinctive manner in concert with the upper floors of the building, and if the design is approved by the town as creating an architecturally and neighborhood sensitive roof to the development, the same non-occupied features may project above the maximum height limit. And the non-occupied features are the features that are in the in general statement: chimneys, water towers, air conditioners.
Yep, that's pretty standard.
Well, right. So I think, this is something that came up a lot with the Fells Hardware project. And I think it was settled. I don't honestly know, but I don't know if using the word may in this sentence would allow a person to say, nope, you said I could do this. If you approve this, I can do this.
No, it says that.
Yeah,
they
I
can-
mean, you don't want to have all those air conditioning stuff
But-
protruding. I
but
mean,
it-
it's bad enough.
The sentence,
Anyway.
I think if you look at the structure of the sentence, it says, if these features are designed in concert and approved by the town. So those features have to be approved.
Well,
by
they
the
have to be
town.
approved by the town because they create an architecturally and neighborhood
Yeah,
sensitive.
it's just
roof.
that you can ignore all of that. All you can have to say is, if they are approved by the town, they may. So it's up to
Well, I
us.
wouldn't ignore it. The reason there would be approved is because they create an architecturally and
All I'm
neighborhood.
saying is that just if I'm looking at the structure of the sentence to understand the logic, it says they can only happen if the town approves it.
Right.
So they can't come in. So I think that it covers your concern.
Okay, I'll just back off on that. You
Yeah.
win, you lose. You choose your battles.
Okay, so I think, so,
I just want to make sure I had anything else. 16, 17, 18.
so
No, I'm
we
good.
want to add
Okay.
design review to the,
Is there anything in letter E under the corners that we need to talk about in terms of architectural expression? Or are we?
I think that that's, so once, this is very subjective. And so whatever design comes forward, this is a guideline, it's not a requirement. And
Mhm.
so what'll happen is we will work through it after, so again,
Okay,
what they're presenting are concepts
sure.
that will get worked through. And if they come up and they give you a, sort of like a brutalist architecture right off the bat, you can say no. But
Yeah, I mean, City Hall in Boston, the brutalist structure was I think highly acclaimed by many when it was built.
well, I think that, yeah, so I think there's enough. The point is they're guidelines and they're subjective, and we can't write everything in there which will nail it down because
Right, and it's basically the same language that's in the Center Business District regulations right now.
not surprising because this all came from Dennis Carlone.
Right, and
So-
those were subjectively interpreted to whatever degree of success one determines that they were.
Everything is design is subjective. I don't know how we get around that. I mean, that's just,
Yeah, I mean, we'll work through it, I think.
Yeah.
I think that if we can just come out with a really great looking building that won't completely piss off the neighborhood.
I think that if we do that, we will have achieved a miracle.
Well, I'd like it to be less than miraculous. I'd like it to be a well.
Maybe we can apply, let's apply some science to this particular one.
So speaking of science and the progression of time, which I do believe exists, although some say it doesn't, we are, I think we're now, where it's now 10 of 9. We have 40 minutes left. We have 4 things on our schedule. We have to decide which ones we want to do. I think we can do the NPIC selection committee very quickly. We just need 4 people who are willing to to be on the committee, it should only take maybe a couple of meetings per.
You mean the
selection
people on the
committee.
planning board would be on the
We-
MPIC?
Yes,
selection
we
committee?
are on every single one of the selection committees.
Oh, so we get to choose between the 4 themes.
We choose between the 4 themes, and the chair sits down with the select board chair and the town moderator to choose the youth representative. So, does anyone, so these would, these would be a couple of meetings which would occur, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, but within the next 3 or 4 weeks, hopefully, depending upon how many applicants we get.
Can you say the 4 committees?
The 4
Yeah,
themes of the,
4
yeah,
themes, community,
well, it's
There's-
balanced growth.
what?
It's
No, I
balanced.
thought it was
So
more
where was the
specific than
4
that.
statements? Here it is.
No, I thought it was more like,
um,
Yeah, it's
hold on,
connecting people to places.
yeah,
can you just, yeah,
Balancing
it's,
growth and historic preservation.
Yep.
okay.
Um,
there's a sustainability,
Mhm.
building
Well,
community.
basically, yeah,
Here it is,
hold on.
ensuring sustainability and then building community, which is in resident engagement, event services programs that bring the
Okay,
town
so,
together.
can you go through those 4 again, Sally? Because I think.
Yes, so it's right, it's on page
Just read it off, please.
24 of
Just say
the
it, we
master
don't have
plan
it.
document. So it's balancing preservation and development,
Mhm.
connecting people to places,
Mhm.
ensuring sustainability, and building community.
Okay. So, does anyone have a preference? It would be good if not, that if we had different people on different committees rather than have one person on all the committees. Like
I'd
I
like to
said,
nominate Nick to go to the balancing development with preservation.
I suppose that, fits me to some degree,
Okay.
so
so you have accepted?
thank you.
Excellent. So that's Nick.
Sure.
Why Nick here?
Oh, just because he keeps asking me questions about historic buildings. That's really subjective. I
So
mean, if
what-
I Ching would rather, then you should discuss that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
Okay.
I think I would like to do that because of just the understanding of buildings, my background, but
Can 2 people do it?
No.
And what's involved, I guess, in that?
You sit down, you evaluate candidates' submission, you do interviews with candidates, and you try to make sure that you have a good candidate.
Right, just to back up one step, Diab. So what we're doing is we're selecting we're deciding which member of the planning board will be part of each of the 4 groups that will decide the 2 people from town that will address each of these 4 themes
Yep.
on the master plan implementation committee itself. The selection committee is picking those 2 people, 2 people, 2 people, and 2 people.
Yep. So,
so for me, it would be the development part and historic preservation or the sustainability. And I would be more interested in the development portion.
okay,
but,
so I'm gonna write down, so I Ching, Nick, Sally, and we won't give anything to Kurt, although we probably should because he's not here and he can't say no.
Doesn't that always happen if you miss a meeting?
That's what happens, yeah. You always give actions to people who aren't here. Sorry, Sally?
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. Isn't that what happens?
Yep. So I
Um,
Ching wants building and sustainability. Nick wants building, and do you have a second choice?
No, I think I would just take the 1. That was what I really ran on, and I
Okay,
do
but
have a
if you,
special interest there.
if for some reason you don't get to be on building, do you have another one you'd like to go to? So we can
No,
split it up?
no.
Okay, then you don't mind if we assign you to one?
I
I'm just trying to divide up. the-
would mind, actually.
Okay, I'm trying to divide this up equally so that we spread the burden. Okay, Sally?
Well, I'm happy to help select the MPIC members addressing connecting people to places or building community. Either one of those, I
Okay,
would wrap my head around finding 2 good people.
okay, and what the heck do I want to do? Sustainability is one of mine, and building community. Okay, so looks like we have an overlap between, so Sally, you were the only one who said people and places.
Okay, I'm on it.
Okay, so that's Sally. I Ching, you and I said you have sustainability, I have sustainability and building community.
Mhm.
And Nick, you just have building,
Balancing.
balancing building, sorry. Okay, so it's, shall we flip a coin between I Ching and Nick? And then if I Ching wins on building, I don't have a coin, let me find a random number generator. Then we will have to, let's see, pick a number. Okay.
So in the issues here, what's happening in these actual groups of people that, the people that are meeting as a group of 8+2, Brian and.
We're simply evaluating candidates.
Good. So I've got a random number generator here. If it's greater than a half, it goes to Nick. If it's less than a half, it goes to I Ching.
Why again can't more than one person sit in on those?
Because that's the way they're set up. There are 5 members on each committee, and there's only a single member from the planning board on each committee. The rest of the members on the selection committee are divided between other boards and commissions. And that's the plan we came up with. We chose that to keep the selection committees manageable and to ensure that there is as widespread input into these, into the.
I mean, does that mean that the planning board overall won't have a say in the selection?
No, it means that one person will be on 2 committees. Oh, the planning board gets 1 vote out of 5 on each of these selection committees. It's designed that way.
So there's 4 selection committees. And
this is supposed to be a committee. The MPIC is supposed to be a community town government wide. So it represents all of town government, not just the planning board. We have enough weight in there, I think, because we do have a voice on each of these 2 members, plus they're a subcommittee of the planning board. So we have significant voice already, I think. And we will be aiding them in the first few months to year of their existence, bringing them up to speed. So, but this is the design that we came up with last fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, so we have a random number, and if it's less than a half, it goes to I Ching. Greater than a half, it goes to Nick, and the random number is 0.3482. So I Ching, you get balancing buildings with preservation through the random number generator.
Thank you.
That means that I will do building community, and then I guess I will also do sustainability, unless someone else wants to pick that up.
It's possible Kurt could.
Kurt might.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we just put me down there, and then we will we'll see if Kurt would like one of those. He can do either. I'm equal on both, so we'll see.
And so can you give us a status report on people who are the chairs of the boards who are?
I cannot give you a status report,
Okay,
unfortunately.
good answer.
I had some computer issues over the weekend, and it was only through the grace of fate that I am with you this evening on the computer. So
They're the worst.
yes, don't delete your files starting at the topmost directory. You discover all sorts of things disappear on you. So let us move on then to, we now are at 9 o'clock. We have half an hour. So we have
Warrant article timeline.
We can do town planner position description, or town meeting warrant article timeline, or education and outreach. officially, the next one up is town planner position description. So I'll let the board vote. Sally wants to go with timeline.
That's correct.
Yeah, timeline. Let's look at timeline. We'll do the other one next time.
I want to hear
we've
what
seen.
Ying thinks.
How did you do on your job description, Brian?
Yeah, I did not add, I mean, I added a few things. It did not, it's a pretty all-encompassing job description in general. I think it does capture a lot of what I do. Some of it's going to be kind of a policy decision in terms of meetings, in terms of what meetings I should be going to in terms of other boards and committees, but I'm fine with how things are going at the moment. I think it was more of this chance of the DM wanted to bring up, because we should be doing this on a periodic basis of saying, is this working in terms of meeting schedule, or is it even reflecting, accurate work? So I've put in some very minor additions, and those are highlighted in your packet.
Okay, so yours are the ones that are highlighted in red.
Oh, I think I missed that, Brian. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
mine's
So-
the highlighted in red. I can,
Oh, okay, because I crossed out a lot of those
that's also fine.
because I thought it was redundant with some of the other clauses. So,
I have my packet open now. Let me see what it,
so we have two people who want to go for the town meeting warrant article path. I Ching, did you have a vote as to how you want to spend the rest of our time?
I'm okay with that either.
Okay, why don't we do that? It seems, and then we will. I forgot where we left off. I thought we were going to try to get this as a Gantt chart, but I think that was.
no, I think what we discussed about the Gantt chart was that we would, in the process of deciding how we were going to approach all of the important projects that are on our list, and we had a list that was in front of us. We were trying to say, well, this one's equally important to this, but it's in a different phase. This
So-
one is getting really ripe for town meeting, and this one is farther back, right? And so that it's not that they're more important or less important. It's that this one we're doing this step in, and this one we're doing this step in.
Right,
and-
so,
This is a document that describes the steps.
yes, but this could also be put into a Gantt chart, so you understand how they step. And
Oh,
what
I
they-
see. Okay.
So I do not recall where we left this off. So I don't know what's left to discuss
Well,
here.
so
I think there were some modifications to some of these in terms of the dates.
does the one that is on the screen say 429? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
no,
good.
so this is, so yeah, so
Yeah,
we
so
had
the
a
only
meeting on this.
addition I have is to change the word the to the word to on the top of the first and second pages. Path to town meeting, not path the. That was my,
Well, I think that we had discussed where we would start meeting, where we would start having public hearings.
right, and we did. So this is reflecting the discussion from incorporating the edits from the 426 planning board meeting.
Yeah, so I still see something a little weird.
Okay, let's do it. What is it?
We have,
Oh, fuck, what's this at least?
we're
Five
posting notice of a public hearing 3 months prior to town meeting. Okay,
Oh, so yeah, so let me just walk us through this. First of all, I noticed on step one that I put an F instead of a number for months before town meeting. 14 weeks before the warrant article closes. The warrant article closes 1.5 months before town meeting. And 14 weeks is 3, 6, 9, 4.5 months. So that would be 6 months before town meeting. The planning board deliberates and agrees on provisions of a proposed bylaw, right? And we get a draft of that bylaw by the planning board, and we schedule and meet with town council and review the language. And that's all happening in step one, right? So let's
Okay.
use an example. Let's use the ADU bylaw for an example. So 6 months before we want to bring it to town meeting, we're actually starting the process of actually drafting the bylaw language and getting edits from legal. At that point, we have 2 months to do that. And then 2 months before town meeting, 10 weeks before the warrant article closes, we incorporate the edits from council and we meet with the select board and we schedule and post notice of a public information session. And then we, at least 2 weeks before the session, and then we conduct that session and receive edits and comments. Okay, so we're basically rolling out our ideas incrementally and incorporating ideas before we move to the next group. And in step 3, we meet with, so step 3, 3 months, we're incorporating edits from the select board and the public information session. And we post a notice 3 weeks in advance that we're going to meet with as many different boards and committees as we want. We get on their agendas. And historical submission says this about ADUs or the assessor's department or whatever. I mean, I think
So,
this
So-
list is pliable,
So-
malleable. I mean, depending
Yeah.
on what the warrant is about, the article's
so,
about.
so let's just assume we're moving towards November 1st, okay?
Okay, so if we wanted to put something on the fall agenda, right? May, June, July, August, September. So by June, July, August, September,
No,
October.
let's say step 1. Step 1 is so November is 11, so we subtract 6 from 11. we
Well,
get
if you
5.
go to the second page, it's right there.
Yeah, I know, but I want to look at it in terms of what you've got here. I want the front, I'm going to stick on the front page. Just for-
Okay,
So we're talking May 1st for step 1.
for a fall town meeting.
Yep, May 1st for step 1. Step 2, we're talking about July 1st. Step May, June, July. It says, no, there's
Isn't it 4 weeks? 4 weeks later?
it's
So
2
it's-
months later.
We have 2 months to draft and get a bylaw
Between 1 and 2,
legal that
it's
we
2
can take
months.
to the
Yep.
select board.
So step 3 is.
Why-
So that's.
Sorry, I'm
August.
sorry, but
Yep.
it says here 14 weeks and 10 weeks. That's the difference of 4
That's
weeks.
before the warrant closes.
Okay,
You
well, it's
see
still
that the
time.
warrant closes 1.5 months before town meeting. That's in that box in the middle of the page.
I'm just saying the difference between step 1 and step 2 is 1 month, not 2 months.
Well, according to what we just went over, Brian, unfortunately, step 1 was at least 6 months before town meeting.
That's what I figured out, Brian.
And step 2 is at least 4
Oh,
months.
so this 14, gotcha. So this
So there's
14
something awry in the counting, but let's just go with the months and
Okay,
then we'll work it out. So 3 months before town meeting is in August. And I just want to make sure that we're going to do things during times of the year that people are around.
Well, you'll notice it says at least 3 weeks before the hearing. And so if we're in August, we might have those hearings the first week in September, just to get everybody
Oh,
talking.
yeah. No, I'm just looking at, so
You
we're
also
asking,
said to me in the last meeting that a lot of these boards meet in August.
yeah, but the public doesn't. The public.
That's why step 4 is a public hearing.
Yeah, no, I'm just, okay, 7 weeks before town meeting would be September 11th or September 4th. Nope.
Well, no,
I'm
if
not
step
opinion.
4, conduct formal public hearing 2 months before town meeting. So that would be September, it would be the first half of September.
Yeah, but 7 weeks before town meeting is about 1 week after that. So that's about September 7th, let's say. or
Right, so
September
we're
14th.
incorporating edits from the public hearing and
Yep,
we're
yep.
working fast.
I'm only just, so 1 month before town meeting is October 1st. And town meeting is November 1st. So I just want to go through. So I think May 1st.
So like right now, we have, the big thing is we want to meet with the select board in July, okay? And we need to get legal to bless, we're using an example, the ADU bylaw. So say we did that, right? That we want to be working with legal now on our terms, on our restrictions, our provisions. I think I used the word provisions, there it is. And we draft something, we get it to legal, they fix it, and we meet with the select board in July. Or in June.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if 2 months is enough to do that.
Well, the other thing that happens is that in step 3, which is in August, we're also meeting with the other boards and councils and commissions and committees. And we're also meeting with the building department and the engineering department and anybody else who wants to weigh in on this bylaw so that their needs are reflected, right? But the big thing is we got to have this public hearing before the warrant closes. So I was saying, let's do it 2 weeks before the warrant closes, and example date for the fall town meeting of 21, the warrant closed on September 17th.
Mm-hmm. But I don't, I'm still concerned that 2 months to get something that we can present to select board that isn't a really rough draft. I'm
Well, so
wondering,
let's back it up to step 4. It's imperative that we have our public hearing the first week in September. That means that we have from now until the first week in September
I'm
to
sorry,
get through council, select board, a public information session, and lots of meetings with different committees. We can,
but my point is not between now and September. My point is getting it to August, or I'm sorry, to July, and having something that's ready for the select board to comment on.
I see. You think we can't do that in July? Can we
I'm
do it in August?
concerned that we need, whatever we get before the select board has to be really solid so that, because we don't want to give them something which is going to radically change from what they're going to see in August. I don't think that if someone came before our board and said, here's this big project we're going to put forward, but it might change in 2 months to be something that is really different, you're going to say, well, then don't bother with wasting my time now. Just come to me in August when you've got it done. And so my concern is that.
So I'm hearing an interesting comment, which might be really important. You see where I have this list in step 3, meet with below and receive comments and edits. Do you think that their input would be more useful before we put together the select board draft?
I think, for instance, the building department certainly will. I don't know, going to the ZBA because of their quasi-judicial nature, I think that's a question for legal. I know we've had questions about that in the past.
They would probably, yeah, well, I won't speak for them. I'll stop.
Yeah,
But certainly involving the select board at this point does make sense, I think.
Which
At
point?
step 2?
3.
At step 3.
Oh, sorry, meet with the select board, yes. But then have them, yeah, carry them with you, yes.
I'm confused now.
I'm confused too, Brian. Say it again.
Step 2 is that we schedule a meet with the select board, we receive comments and edits. And then at this next one, we'd be getting, if there are any
Further.
if there are any, well, I guess the question is if there's any changes between 2 and 3, but I guess there might not be. But I would, what I'm trying to say is that it's not a one and
That's what
done.
draft 3 bylaw language incorporates edits from select board and public information meeting.
I think I would be more comfortable, I think, switching I think that the practical, who do we want to get practical input from rather than policy from? So select board will probably have a lot about policy, but in terms of actual zoning, I think the building department would be the person we would get input from, because they would have comments on how to change the language.
Right.
So
And- yeah.
I would say building and engineering, DRC. I don't know that it's ripe for FinCom. DPW, I guess it depends on what we're trying to do.
Like if we were doing the tree bylaw, we would absolutely be
Yeah.
writing it with the DPW.
So I would say that if there are people that we think are going to help us with the wording and some of the technical details, we should see them before we go to getting some sort of policymakers.
Okay, great. So it's general input from lots of people. And frankly, would we want to have this public information session before we meet with the select board? To get, like, we could do precinct meetings if we had the time and get everybody's input on whatever it is that we're bringing before town meeting in the fall
I think that we can do those in parallel.
with,
We can do the select board and the public information session. I think they're independent.
okay, and that's why I had them in the same step.
Yeah, so I
We
think
just have to
that,
post the notice in advance.
yeah, so we would just post it so that, I mean, and since this isn't a hearing, there's no official, we can do it whenever we want, but 2 weeks is being polite.
Oh, for the info session.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's
you
not,
told me that 2-week thing that last time we talked.
yeah, 2 weeks is great because it lets people know.
Okay, so I'm gonna just move up that schedule and meet with below to step 1.
Step 1. Step 2. I mean, I think we can have informal conversations with the other boards with a less fully baked text.
Yeah, I would think so too. That's why I'm
And so,
moving it up.
yeah, so I think that we engage the select board and say FinCom if that's appropriate. I don't know if FinCom is, it depends on obviously what it is.
Well, like for ADUs, the FinCom would be very interested in knowing what the tax income impact would be on an ADU bylaw, for instance.
Yeah, and I don't know if so the question is, would we provide them with that research or would they do it on their own?
That's to be determined. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't,
And if we were doing the tree bylaw, they might, the historical commit, well, I have to,
we
I
can
don't know.
certainly reach, I'm just trying to,
We would be working with the assessor's department, by the way, to determine that and
Okay.
at least to give a rough estimate and then,
Good.
so
but
that
they're
would
already
be,
on, that's what I'm saying. They're already, you already have them on there. So
Yeah,
I'm just saying
but so-
I'm just saying who we'd be working with.
yeah, so
Okay.
that would be in our July meeting. So building department, assessors department, engineering department, DPW, and DRC would be in step 2, and probably historical commission as well. Because those would have a real, they could help us shape text, and we could bounce less formal things off of them. FinCom and select board would come in step 3.
Okay, I got that.
And I think we just need to get, I personally would want to get town council to tell us whether the ZBA, whether it's appropriate for someone who is judging based on the zoning, have an input into its writing. So
I
that's,
think it's a very good question for legal. It occurs
Yeah.
to me that it's valuable, but we shouldn't debate that at this point.
yeah, I agree that, so if it's.
Where would you have this initial public information session, like what is happening at the Jenks on the 25th for ADUs?
I think we would have that at the same, in step 3.
Okay,
'Cause
good.
we've met with all the people we're working with to put the language together. Then we're going to essentially go public with it. We're going to present it to the select board. We're going to present it to the public. Then we're going to incorporate all of those things.
Yeah, so you see in step 4, we're going to get
Yep.
another draft and we're going to incorporate edits from all the boards above.
Yep.
And we're going to have already incorporated all the edits from the select board. And we're have incorporated edits from the public information session,
Yeah.
right?
So
So
that-
we take
yeah.
that to a public hearing.
Yep.
Which is 2 weeks before the warrant closes. It's the public hearings that we all go to. If you're a town meeting member, you go to the warrant article meeting, right?
Okay. So then there's okay, the form. Yeah. So 2 weeks before warrant closes. Yep. So I'm much more comfortable with this schedule because it gives
Good.
us from May until August to really solidify the language before it goes to the select board.
I like that too, Diab. And then what happens about a week before the warrant closes, we have to post notice. Oh, you know what? This is different. the public hearing in step 4 is truly open to the public. They all are, but it's targeted to the broader public. There's a town meeting member warrant article hearing described in step 5, and we have to post the notice of that at least 3 weeks in advance.
I think that, isn't that the one that the town manager does?
I think that depending on who is the
There's a specific,
proponent,
there's only specific things for zoning. So for zoning, we have to have it, a certain amount of time before town meeting. For the manager's hearing, there's no requirement. I mean, there's no real requirement for it has to be in the paper and
posting, I
or
see.
in a posting and when that has to be.
Okay.
Although a manager's hearing always happens, but it's just zoning specifically, it has to have those, we have to have those 2 advertisements in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks, and it has to be within 90 days of sometime within 90 days of town meeting.
Okay.
90 days is 3 months.
Yeah, I believe that's what I believe it is.
Right, and I
Yeah.
didn't think, so 3 months before town meeting would be August.
But it has to be within that time, but
Let's see.
it doesn't have to be at 3 months, just sometime within 3 months.
So we're good. We're good where you've got it, Sally.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no
And then the
issue.
warrant closes, and then we have the town meeting members warrant article public hearing. And this is where the planning board makes a presentation on this thing that we're bringing before town meeting in the fall.
So so I don't know that we've ever done that. So I don't know, the town meeting members warrant article hearing this is something I'm not familiar with. Is this the
Oh.
same as the town manager's hearing?
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause typically,
Yes, it is the town manager's meeting.
so
Yeah.
typically those are for articles which have not already had a hearing.
However, the thing that's true. However, the manager runs it, and although zoning definitely isn't covered or it's not highlighted, it's also kind of used as a forum for
Okay.
people to come and kind of ask anything. And most of the time I'm there when there is a zoning question. But it's called town manager's hearing. It's not town meeting members warrant article. public
Okay,
hearing.
so let me fix that, town manager's meeting. But
So
let me ask
question,
you a question, Brian, if it's a zoning thing, because I saw this fall or this spring, that proponent boards called their own meeting. Like the school board called their own meetings about Carriage and Parkhurst and all of that.
Because they were trying to push, just like we have our own info sessions and hearings for zoning. It's the same
Right,
thing.
so that's what I was saying, that in the step 4, this is us getting a formally advertised public hearing to receive comments and edits from the public on whatever the thing is that we're gonna bring to the fall.
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
are required to do it at that time,
Yeah.
essentially, if it's a zoning article.
Right,
Exactly.
so that's good. And then, Brian, what you're saying is the one in step 6, the town manager's warrant article public hearing is,
It's not really a part of our schedule, is what I'm saying, is that, it's tangentially related, meaning that there might be a zoning, if we do have a zoning article that time, it's not like I'm going to be up there presenting.
Yeah, we
oh, you know what, this is what Heather Van Mering said to me. You see the bullets? She said, when you have this warrant article meeting, you're gonna build awareness, you're gonna flush out concerns and issues, you're gonna have conversations, and you're gonna address them or find out they're not really issues. And then you're gonna examine the issues and facts and clarify and communicate leading into town meeting.
They might not bring it up at all, is all I'm saying.
we don't, yeah, so.
It's not our hearing, if
it's
that's
the-
what you're putting on here.
we-
Well, then
the-
I was asking whether the planning board, like the school committee did, would think that it would be on a case-by-case basis advisable to have their own hearings like the school committee did about their big ask.
But
We do.
we do that. That's the one in step.
That's what we do. We do that. They're doing it like us, if that
Okay, so
means it.
step 4 is in the first half of September.
Yeah, and we
And
have to,
then we receive comments and edits, and then we just incorporate everything we've heard into the warrant.
Well, everything the board votes on, the
Right,
board doesn't have to
obviously.
incorporate everything that's
No, I
heard.
mean, if somebody says, I don't want any, ginkgo trees.
We listen to it and we come up with the final version of the warrant article, which we submit.
Right,
After that, we do not have, I mean, we could, the problem there is that the town manager's hearing is usually for articles which have not yet had a hearing. So,
okay, so I'm gonna take out that line that says conduct formal town meeting members warrant article. That's just coming out. And the town manager's warrant article hearings are not part of our flow.
No, but I would put it in there. I would say it would not, but I would say 1 month before town meeting, there's a town manager's public hearing. And not necessarily to build where these bullets might not, but it could be, it's really be available for question. It's another chance for either me or a planning board member to be there for questioning. So, and it's in a very public.
Right, because now we all have the warrant in our lap.
But it's not like part of, I think what Dia is trying to say is that it's not really part of our timeline. It just happens to be, if that means anything, because we're not presenting. It's just
It-
more
The
of-
point I was trying to make was that between the first half of September, when we have our public hearing, and there's either great support or very excellent points or great objection, whatever. And when we get to October 1st, right? So from the first half of September to the 1st of October, so that's like 7 weeks. And in that 7 weeks, has the town gone ape with protest? And if they have, you look at step 7, and what Heather explained to me is you can make a motion to amend, or you can even pull it, like the second dot, the B, pull it at the
Yeah.
last minute if
Yeah.
it's too far
well,
from
that's
you.
what we did last fall. We pulled the warrant article.
Right,
So,
right. And the goal would be that we would take advantage of that 7 weeks
which is what we normally do, yes.
to build awareness, flush out concerns, have conversations, address them, or figure out they're not issues, examine the issues, clarify and communicate.
Yes, so that's what we typically do, yes.
And that would be in the months before town meeting.
That's
Okay, good. Good. That's what we're doing.
no other time to do it.
Right.
Um,
And then we get to the
And-
month of November.
and then there's nothing left to do.
Well, we roll it out. And if you know how the town meeting can take twists and turns, if it's absolutely needed that we make a motion, that can happen there, right?
Yep,
And we
yep.
continue to build awareness and flush out concerns like FinCom did until the 4th night or the 3rd night of town meeting, right? and then we
Our
either-
articles tend to come in the first night.
Oh, good. Okay, so first night, that's good to know.
So we usually are early on, zoning articles come first.
Okay, and so then we take a vote, or we pull it if we have to.
Yep.
And if it does not pass,
Mhm.
then we incorporate language to address all the concerns and issues fleshed out in the first rollout.
Or we do nothing. Like, for instance, we did not pass the half story thing did not pass.
Right, but
We-
we do have a plan about that one, just as a parenthetical, which is that we were going to do a review of all the overlapping definitions.
Yes, but all I'm saying is step 7 does not reflect that. I think we have decided to take a different route.
Oh, okay, so then you could say, if planning board chooses,
The planning board can do anything they want in step 7.
right, we could repeat steps 1 to 5 in preparation for the next town
or
meeting
we
in the
could just
spring or whatever.
lick our wounds and move on.
Well, I think this was supposed to be,
Yeah,
the conversation that I had with Heather was framed as, I know sometimes it takes several passes through town meeting to uncover all the issues and educate the public. How do you go through this in multiple passes? And that's why she was giving me the multiple pass edition of this.
yeah. I mean, the planning board has been, I think, quite lucky that historically, when we've put something before a town meeting, they have passed it. And it's only recently that Brian's 100% passage rate was broken. So all apologies to you, Brian. You're doing a wonderful job for, I think, 7 years. So Okay, I had
I Ching, are
forgotten to
you
look at the.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look like you had thoughts bubbling all
Oh,
over.
no. I was just sort of getting lost. But
Okay, so we have now reached the witching hour of 9:30. So I think,
I'm gonna make the edits and send them to Brian right away.
so yeah, I think those edits are good. I think I'm comfortable with the timeline. I think we don't actually have anything that we are going to consider for this fall.
Right, and so
Oh.
what if you turn to the backside,
Yeah,
you can see that if we wanted to do something in spring, I left the first box open by mistake, and I think it should say mid-October to mid-November.
Yeah.
Brian, does that sound right?
Well, we'll just do 6 months from spring. So spring is
Spring is April. It's always April, like April 29th.
yeah, let's just call it May 1st. Go back 6 months. So that's beginning of December, right?
Yep.
No, I'm sorry. That's beginning of
It's mid-October.
beginning of November. Yeah, mid-October.
Mid-October to mid-November, the
Okay.
planning board decides on draft provisions in a bylaw. So say we were
Okay.
doing the ADU, we would absolutely want to know what we were going to go for by mid-October.
So why don't you edit this up?
I will.
And then send it to me and I'll put it in a Gantt chart so we can actually see how things overlap in time. So it'll be helpful to see where we start overlapping.
That would be fabulous. I would love that.
And then the other action items for this evening are, I will, if with the board's permission, I will write up our response to the RFP.
And I'm going to draft the memo for the 4 petitions and do the best I can with it. Brian, you can send me the recording.
Yeah, I will do that.
And when is the ZBA meeting?
I think it's the 19th,
Okay, so you have a little
Yeah,
bit.
you have a little
time.
bit of time.
barely.
And the select board is meeting pretty soon, right?
I'm
Is
pretty
it-
sure they're meeting the Monday, the 16th,
Let me
and
just
Okay.
verify that.
we have form in place on the 17th. That's a
Okay.
standalone.
Right, okay, so I will, if the board is the board okay with me writing this memo to the select board?
yes, thank you for
Okay.
doing that.
I don't think there will be time to get it back to the
No.
board for comments, so I think I can capture them. And Brian, if you can send me the link as well to the video.
Sure.
Okay, so we are still, I Ching, we are always disappointing you in terms of following your rule, but we will get better in time. So we have dropped the town planner position and education outreach. We will
Yep.
move those to another meeting. I'm not sure when, but as soon as possible.
Sally, thanks for the timeline. It's not only helpful to figure out where we're going, but as a new member, it's helping me to understand the process. So I'm finding it very helpful.
Well, and this came out of my head because I called Heather, and I called Heather because I was really struck by the dialogue around the Waterfield lot and the referendum. And it was all about, nobody tells us anything. You're all working behind closed doors.
And to be that person, I'm going to say, it doesn't matter how much we do. I'll always say that.
Yes, and this is an attempt to like codify
Yep,
outreach, which is an agenda item.
yep. No, it's good. I appreciate that you're doing this, Sally.
No, I'll third that as well. Thank
Yeah.
you, Sally.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is
good.
really
I'll
good.
get right on that edits and get it to Brian and Dia pronto.
Okay, so at this point, we usually entertain a motion to adjourn. Somebody say the word. I have to hear
Oh,
you.
okay, I so move.
Second.
Okay, second. Roll call vote, please. I Ching,
I
Nick,
Aye.
Sally,
I,
Gibbs is aye as well. Thanks to Nancy Polcari, not Nancy
Yes.
Pelosi, and Brian Sekeli. Thanks to Brian Manter, Assistant Town Engineer, who has decided that we are too boring. Thank you, WinCam.
and thank you, Zena.
Thank you, Zena. Zena, you've stuck with us for a while. And thanks to everyone out there in TV land. We will see you again next week, Tuesday. Special meeting with Forum in Place, talking about North Main Street. Have a great night.
7 or
everyone.
7:30. Sorry.
7.
Oh,
Oh,
I believe we did it at 7:30. It's a short meeting. It's an hour and a half long. It's 7:30 to 9.
Okay, thank you.
good.
I
Okay.
believe we decided, and Kurt was happy because he wouldn't have to miss dinner or something like that. So, okay. See you all tomorrow. I'll see you all next week.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you all. Bye.